Not, Vicky. Let's proceed to conduct of
Conduct
business.
of business. Item 9A, adopt resolution initiating property owner notice and protest process as required by Proposition 218 for fiscal year 2018-19 garbage rate increase proposed by Recology San Bruno.
Mr. Leary.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, Recology San Bruno has requested an interim year rate adjustment in accordance with their franchise agreement with the city. Based on a change in the CPI index between January 2017 and December of 2017, and increased contractual landfill disposal costs at Ox Mountain Landfill form the basis of this interim adjustment request. The request for this year, totals being recommended to you is 2.45%. This adjustment blends 80% of the change in CPI and the percentage increase in disposal costs at Ox Mountain as a pass-through in the amount of 2.33%. So the net calculation for 2018-19 is the 2.45% adjustment. Changes as a result of this request for a 32-gallon residential toter is a 72-cent increase from $29.37 to $30.09. This change, based on existing rates with comparator cities, a total of 15 other locales are included in the staff report. With this change, San Bruno would remain, again, right exactly at the median of all of the cities. We would be ranked 8th out of the 16, and over many years, with rate changes that the city itself has implemented, the city has remained right at that midpoint of all of these agencies. The figures that are presented for other agencies do not include any other increases that might take effect in those locales July 1st. Actions after tonight. The action proposed by the council is consideration of the proposed rate increases, and in particular the property owner notice under Proposition 218 that is attached to the staff report. It would be our intent, if the council gives us direction, to get this in the mail. I think the 25th of March is the drop dead date that we need to get that in the mail. There is no specific council approval of the rates tonight. That would take place at a later time, where the city council would hold a public hearing, consider any protests under the 218 process, and take action on new ordinance. May 8th would be the schedule for that particular action, and then there would be a second reading May 22nd, where the actual rates would be approved if the council so desired. Just the last points I would make, the City Council Ad Hoc Garbage Committee met last Thursday. Councilmember Salazar and Marty Medina met and reviewed the matter with Recology, and I would ask them to make comments as far as a recommendation or direction that they would propose. Would also point out the obvious, that Kirsten is here from Recology, and she could further answer any questions that the council has. With that, I conclude my remarks and be glad to answer any question the council has.
Questions or comments from council? Subcommittee? Nothing? Kirsten, did you want to address or say anything, or after? No. Yeah. Okay. Please.
So this rate increase is part of the contract that Recology is allowed to request. And this action is just following through the process of allowing the residents, the customers, to provide a objection. It's very, very hard to get, but it is the law, and that's what we're doing tonight, to allow the notifications to go out.
I would say yes to both. The franchise agreement calls for processes for annual increases for covering the cost of providing the service. Those are either in detailed years or in interim years. Last year was an interim year. This year is an interim year. Next year is a detailed year where there is a specific and in-depth review of all expenditures in order to determine the amount of revenue that the service is allowed. So next year is a detailed year. The notice to ratepayers that you described is not part of the franchise. That's part of Proposition 218, and that 218 actually became law about 10 years after the franchise, and so it's a process that we've added since that time to allow residents to get notice, as you indicated.
Any other questions or comments or action from council?
I think you have a question.
Oh, I apologize, Robert.
I didn't fill out a form yet. Robert Rico
okay.
on 7th Avenue. In the past, I think you had some discussion on whether the notices would go to property owners and renters, so that the people that were actually paying would get the information. I thought in the past, did the notices only go to the registered property owners?
City Manager?
So according to Proposition 218, it's property owners who have the ability to protest. But Mr. Reichel is correct. We were previously requested to send both to property owners as well as to property occupants, renters, and then the City Council can decide how you want to evaluate the results of that solicitation. It is about it's a great deal of work to separate them out. So property owners who live in their properties here in San Bruno, owner-occupied premises would probably receive two pieces of mail, and renters would receive one, and then non-occupant owners would receive one for the same property. So it is a little bit of double doing, but we're happy to do that.
Subcommittee have any comments, or did this come up in dialogue?
It didn't.
Okay. Any thoughts from council in regards to this topic? Please, Irene.
Thank you. I'd like clarification. So the people who are renting, even though they may be paying the utility bill, really don't have the right to deny it or to vote against it or protest it? But they would but what you're suggesting is that we give, not you're suggesting, the suggestion out there is that we give them a notice anyway. Is that correct?
Yes. So I'll ask
the short answer is yes.
The short answer is yes. So I'll ask the city attorney to correct anything I say that's incorrect. But Proposition 218 is fundamentally about property-related fees and charges. And so in an abundance of caution, as the staff report indicates, we have included garbage rates under our, as something that we notice property owners about. And again, under the law, those are the individuals, that is who the law addresses. So to send also, and it is correct that in the city of San Bruno, we do provide garbage service. We do allow tenants to subscribe for garbage service. We don't require that garbage service be subscribed by the property owner. So in some cases where the property is rented, it's the tenant or the renter who is actually directly incurring the cost. And I believe that is the reason that this consideration for providing notice to tenants and owners came up. And when it comes to a protest, Proposition 218 says if you receive more than 50%, if you receive 50% plus one protest through this process, you are precluded from implementing the rate increase. However, at less than 50% protest, it's your discretion how you want to handle that public feedback.
Okay, thank you. Part of the reason I'm asking is Recology already sent out a notice of proposal rate increases, correct? That was in the utility, or is this the one you're proposing to send out? Okay, so in our packet, there's a proposed utility rate increase notice that
Right,
goes with
and that's mailed by the city,
Right.
and not by Recology.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's, okay. So that goes with the utility bill. Or with the,
The one in the packet that we have made up that's a draft is what the city will mail, not in the bill, but as a
As
specific 218 notice,
okay, okay, just
which is what we've done year to year in this manner. So it's a separate mailing and not part of the bill.
okay.
And if I may, through the chair, sorry
Please.
to interrupt, it is important for the public to know that regardless of how many notices their property receives, the property owner might get a notice, one tenant, two tenant, five tenants might get a notice. The fact is that under Proposition 218, there's only one vote per parcel.
Thank you.
And
The reason
the
I'm
property
asking,
owner has to cast that vote.
the reason I was asking, I was wondering how confusing it might be if what you just said happened, that 5 tenants get, each tenant in a 5-unit apartment get a notice, and they are under the impression that they get to vote no or yes or whatever, but in reality they don't. So I don't know if it's necessary that we do that. Just my thought.
Laura?
I was just going to ask if we can mail the property owners a separate mailer, but since we're not required to mail to the subscribers who are not property owners, can we just do a bill insert or a bill message?
Yes, we could. I don't know that we could, it would not probably be practical to include the whole of the notice. It's several pages, but we could refer people via a bill insert. Tell me if you disagree. But I believe we could include a bill, no. Timing is
I think
yeah.
the bigger issue might be, and it would depend on exactly how the
Yeah.
cycles fall, but we're required to give 45 days notice, and if it was in bill inserts, I'm not sure there were going to be 2 mailings
Right.
Yeah.
in this exact time, so it may or may not be doable.
Excellent point.
We could include, if you're comfortable with that, we could include a bill insert that just simply refers people to a more detailed explanation, both about the dates and the amounts. Since, as Councilmember O'Connell points out, you wouldn't at that point be soliciting their participation in the Proposition 218 process, but just simply providing a means of additional information targeted to the ratepayers. We could refer them to materials on the website with a little bit of specific information about how to inform yourself about it.
Right, I mean, if the council directed, I mean, we could make that notice, and it is for many years now been posted on the city website for these number of weeks in the meantime, and we could make clear that this is a notice that's going to property owners, but at least they would know that as a tenant what their property owner is involved in if you wanted us to do that.
Other comments from council?
Through the chair.
Please, Mike.
So just a point of clarification. So if we were to send the notice to only ratepayers, we potentially could miss some property owners, and then that would run us afoul of
That would not be
218.
consistent with Proposition 218. Proposition 218 requires the mailed notice and the opportunity to protest to property owners.
The property.
So we would need to do
even
that
if those
regardless.
property owners don't pay the rate, so
Correct.
which is
That's correct.
Yeah, so it's a little unusual. Okay.
It is the same with our other utility rates, water and wastewater rates as well.
That's true.
Same issue.
They may not be ratepayers either.
They may not be ratepayers. Correct.
Interesting. Okay.
So action from council. The one thing I hear is potentially putting in a insert into the regular utility billing. I'm not hearing a consensus in which to mail to all ratepayers and property owners. Is that? But this is what I've heard.
That would be my preference. I would prefer that every ratepayer were notified.
So you'd like to go to all property owners and all ratepayers?
To the property owners to be consistent with the law, and to the ratepayers to be consistent with the spirit of the law, which is to allow the people that pay the fee to have an opinion, or to state an opinion.
Okay. So are you talking about a utility billing insert, or are you talking about the 7-page document that the property owner is going to receive, so that will give them the impression that they can have a vote and vote no, but it
I
won't
don't think it
be
ever
counted?
applies. They don't really get a vote. They're allowed to protest. And only if it hits that 50% margin would it have any legal requirement.
Is staff going to have to take and separate these out from property owners to ratepayers? Do we not know that? Or do we know how that would operate? Or does it do what Mr. Salazar said as far as if it got to a 50% threshold?
Are you referring to the responses or to the mailed notices?
Responses.
Responses, we check those against property records anyway, so the answer is yes, we would check any response that we receive, any protest. We always report all protests received to the city council. We would segregate those by qualified property owners and others.
Thank you.
And that's something we would do anyway.
Okay. Council, looking for direction.
I would introduce the resolution with the change, with the adjustment that we would notify all ratepayers.
By the same type of document that, just so staff's clear. Okay.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Object.
Mayor Medina.
No. Okay, the resolution passes 3-2, so that, just so we're clear on the direction, in case staff needs further, that a notice will be sent to every ratepayer, the 7-page document, and every property owner, and will be mailed out, or however many pages it is. Was that understood and that works? Thank you. And now, Kirsten, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. When I met with the ad hoc committee last Thursday, I brought to the attention of an issue that's going on in San Bruno and a program that Recology is going to have to move forward with. So they asked if I can come and describe what's going to be happening to the rest of everyone. So late in 2017, as most people heard, the air quality in China began to decline, or had been declining for some time, and the China Ministry of Environmental Protection decided to finally take some action. So what they've done is they implemented what's called a national sword, and beginning in January, China would stop accepting recyclable materials that had a contamination of less than 1%, about 0.5%. That took a huge effect on the population because we do export most of our recycling to China for processing. So what started in San Bruno, what we had to do is let me describe the process. You put your cart out on the curb, Recology comes and picks up the blue cart, dumps it in the truck. Then they drive the truck to our transfer station, dump it on the floor. A loader operator then scoops up the recycling and puts it into a long-haul semi-truck that then transports it to a recycling processor. We currently use one in San Jose. So what started happening in January is our processor started taking a hard look at all the loads and started rejecting them and saying, your recycling material is too contaminated. We are not going to give you recycling monies for that, and we are also going to charge you to dump this as garbage. So it's kind of a double hit on the financials. So immediately, my team came together and we just said, okay, we have to clean up our recycling. What can we do in the immediate? So what we had to do was all the drivers are taking a hard look at the blue can, and on the route, if the blue can is highly contaminated right now, they are dumping the blue can as garbage. So that is increasing the garbage. It's decreasing our diversion, but it's keeping the clean recycling in the trucks clean and allowing for us not to get rejected contamination loads at the processor. That is not a sustainable method moving forward. So what we have to do is we're working on two things. We're working on a newsletter that we're going to send to all residents and apartment owners and commercial customers that's going to describe the problem in China, and it's going to describe our process that we're going to do moving forward. So once we have identified or notified all of the residents and everyone about this program, our drivers are going to start tagging the blue carts that are highly contaminated. So they're going to tag it with a sticker tag, which is extremely sticky. We're still working on the design because we want to make sure it's very legible and understandable to the resident. We are going to dump it as garbage like we are now, but we're also going to identify the problem. We're going to give them alternatives on where they can put those items somewhere else, and also let them know that the next time it's contaminated, there will be a charge for dumping the cart as garbage. What we're finding, and not only San Bruno, but recently Sacramento also just published an article, a lot of customers are using their blue cart as their overflow for their full garbage can. So we have either customers doing that, or we have customers that don't know if a certain item is recyclable because programs are different all over. So our goal is to really change the customer's behavior. At the same time, we need to clean up our recycling that's being sent to the processor. So again, we will notify every resident and commercial customer with a newsletter describing the problem in China and what Recology is doing about it. And then we will give them a start date on when we will start dumping their blue cans as garbage and tagging them. And then, and I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. Once a customer gets a tag on their blue cart, Recology's customer service team will also follow up with a letter. So we want to make sure that the customers are duly and substantially notified that there was a problem with their cart. So we're trying to notify them as much as possible before them having to incur the charge. Jim, did I miss anything? Besides breathing? Are there questions about this process or that I can answer for any of you?
Before I turn to the council, just two questions. Obviously, there's a warning, and then it's tagged, and then there's an economics to it. What is that?
What are the economics? The economics is going to be, we tried to use something that was already in the rate structure, and in the rate structure, we have a charge for an extra 32-gallon bag, and the 64-gallon blue carts are 64 gallons, so it's twice that fee. So it's going to be $27.60 currently before the rate increase.
And then is there going to be other communications other than just in English for the community?
It's going to be in English and Spanish. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you. Questions from council? Michael?
Through the chair. Thank you. Will the mailer that goes out with the rate adjustments, will that include some language indicating that there will be that new, well, it's not really a new fee, but just an explanation of that, that's going to be, that
Yeah.
will be implemented going
Yes,
forward.
and we would be happy to share the newsletter with the council and staff before we send it out if there's anybody wants to chime in. We're being very thoughtful in the information we put in there. We're being very descriptive, and there will be actually a picture of this card when it's finished in the newsletter. So when they do receive it, it won't be the first time they've seen it. And then the other side will also talk about places they can take clothing, plastic bags. We're trying to find a location for all the contaminants. And it'll have our website, and it'll also have, remind the customers that they can subscribe to a larger cart, a garbage cart as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from council?
Through the chair. So I would assume that you're going to have a lot of customers who are just not clear about what I can and can't, and then disputing the fact that, well, I thought my recycling was pretty clean. Why am I getting charged this extra even though I got this warning? I got this warning, I did better, but it wasn't good enough. So how can we better educate the residents? Because, everywhere I go, whether it's recycling or compost or garbage, everybody's confused. I mean, I would say 8 out of 10 residents and customers and people I work with, they're all confused. And I'm constantly having to educate. So I think the education part of it is going to be really important.
I agree. We also in the ad hoc committee talked about doing a video segment on cable TV. And when we interviewed all of our residential drivers and asked them the things that they saw the most in contamination. And I'm not talking if someone has, a dirty bottle in their blue, that we're not going to tag that. We are seeing lots of clothing, diapers, wood, things that are not recyclable in our program. They're not a plastic or a paper or a glass. So they're really outside the recyclable world. And so those are the things, those are the carts we're going after. So our standards will be, it has to be extremely contaminated for us to tag it. And we want to change their behavior. We just want to be able to get them to call our office and let us explain what is and is not allowed in the program.
Good to know. I was afraid with leaving some peanut butter in the container I was going to be in trouble. So.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from council? Thank you very much for the
Okay,
update.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item, please, Vicki. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. O'Leary?
Just to follow up with the Vice Mayor's question, that the unaddressed, the penalties and the rejection of these items over the long term could have an adverse impact on all the ratepayers. So just taking action is an important thing to do.